What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Coming out of that summer run of different showcases, Ocarina of Time clearly was one of the big reveals, and now there's some other details that seem to have accidentally got out there from Nintendo themselves, and naturally people are dissecting every last word, but we'll go over that here today. Also, we're going to be talking about Valve because it looks like the Steam machine is actually going to get the release date and yes, the pricing here very, very soon after information and actually some images leaked out online. And then we once again have Microsoft talking about Xbox and their plans for their big reset, and it still has people really scratching their head as to which way they're about to go with all this, but we'll go over that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Small Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. Guys, we're every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, going over the world of gaming news, trying to keep you up to date. So just know, even if you don't get a notification in the morning, there's probably a video here to check out. And we're gonna start today with actually some of the stats coming out of that run of different showcases over the last couple of weeks, and we can see this. Now, this is over on social media from Level Up, and appears to be an analyst firm who is basically putting together all the different impressions or views across social media, which includes like YouTube or Twitter X or Instagram, wherever, right? And they just smash them all together here, and they give us some numbers to compare. They say with 15 plus showcases, dozens of world premieres, millions of viewers tuned in from every corner of the world, and we tracked everything. So we can see that the Direct was just ahead of Summer Game Fest, despite having significantly less in terms of co-streams. And then you have the State of Play, the Xbox Game Showcase, and the Gears of War E-Day Direct at the bottom there. But 3.8 million peak viewers on the Nintendo Direct, and the number one game coming out of all of this, yeah, it's indeed Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time at 115 million views. Now, people are a little confused on these numbers, and I'll admit I looked at that and went, wow, really? It's like that? Well, just looking, for example, over on Nintendo's account, like they shared the trailer on Twitter, and it was 25 million views. So that alone right there, and then think about all the other like regional accounts for Nintendo, and then other platforms along with YouTube. It kind of makes sense that it could get to that amount, but again, it's I'm sure there's margin of error and such, but it also wouldn't shock me that, yeah, Ocarina of Time, probably the most viewed and most interest, I would say, poured in, and actually kind of, at least for now, least controversial out of many of these different reveals. Also, with a lot of questions around Xbox, people are naturally looking at the different studios that most likely could be closed down, and one in particular has come up. Now, this we can see is over on Reset Era, and there was a user saying some friends at work for a Microsoft-owned studio just got laid off and told that the studio is shutting down, and people were pressing this user about it, and they said it was Compulsion Games, which they then retracted that post. So hard to say if again, it's a person over on Reset Era, although there are many there that do know people at these different studios or in the industry. And you know, when I'm going up and down the list of studios, because they're kind of there are studio closures expectations now, I think, at Xbox, just based on the way they're talking about accountability margin. Unfortunately, Compulsion Games probably would be one of those studios that would be looked at as, do we really need them going forward? They put out South of Midnight last year, and this would be the time where they'd be thinking about making a game or getting one greenlit or however all of that's working there. And this might be the moment of, you know what? Maybe we are going to go ahead and wind this studio down, as we're expecting significant layoffs coming out of Xbox, which would then result in studio closures. So unfortunate, but yeah, we'll see what happens with Compulsion Games here over the coming weeks. Oh, and going into the holiday season for 2026, there are so many video game releases, it's actually kind of ridiculous. I did a video on this yesterday. If you even just want to see like a run or a lineup of all of the different big titles, I literally put it on a list and went down that list, checking everything out. There were a few days where there were just several games all at once, and it looks like Valor Mortis decided, you know what? We're going to get out of the way here. We can see this. Now, this is quoted from their site over on PSU.com, where they say, September has become absolutely stacked with incredible looking games. We knew this was a possibility, but when you're in a partner showcase, as we were, dates get locked weeks in advance, and we want to give Valor Mortis and your wallet some room to breathe. So they're moving the game from September 24th to October 13th. And September 24th, there are several games out all at once. All right, so moving to October 13th, that's a better time, I'd say. I mean, just in general, it's difficult because there's so many games out, right? But at least trying to move yourself into a decent spot. I think that's something we'll probably see a few other games do here pretty soon. It's just getting everything lined up there ahead of GTA 6, it seems like. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Now, people are calling it Ocarina of Time remake, but Nintendo technically has not used that word yet. They've said reborn, like Ocarina of Time is going to be reborn for the Nintendo Switch 2, and more details coming later. It was a very quick showing, of course, of Link with that graphical art style that looks more realistic, and then they were out. So people are just looking all over the place, trying to find more information about a game that's coming out this year, like 2026, and there's 6 months left in the year, and I don't expect it to come out in December, so really we're probably 4 or 5 months away from the game releasing. Well, as people are searching around, they noticed something. Nintendo seemed to have left some information in metadata on the website, so if you search through Google, you'll actually get like a line that describes it a bit more. And again, people have really been scrutinizing a couple of words here specifically, but like we can see, like this is over on Reddit. If you search it up now, Nintendo appears to have removed it, like it's just gone. So I guess they saw the headlines going around and some of the wording that was being discussed, and they're like, nope, we're just gonna remove that from the site. But like we can see here, and there's also captioned image, the N64 classic reborn as a full remake for Nintendo Switch 2. Experience Ocarina of Time with stunning visuals, updated designs, and timeless gameplay. So first off, it says full remake, all right? And again, people were back and forth as to what they were gonna do here. I mean, I think just from the visual style, it's obviously it's being remade. So, and people will look at varying levels of remake versus remaster. Do you know what I mean? And there's always that, sometimes that line gets a little blurred where you look at a remaster and you feel like it's a full remake. But in this case, I think this means that, okay, Nintendo's going to leave the door open for them to take some liberties creatively with different aspects in the game, okay? They do say, though, stunning visuals, which, again, we've seen the art style now in that little snippet of Link in the beginning of Ocarina of Time asleep, and yeah, it looks fairly impressive, I'd say there, all right? Updated designs, and that makes me wonder in general when it comes to character designs, level designs, world design, dungeons, like there are so many questions with that. Timeless gameplay, though, is the one that people are really, really honing in on here, because now, and you know what's really funny with this? I don't think there's any way Nintendo can like release this game, create this game without somebody being annoyed with it. Like, so if they do a full reimagining of it, people are gonna be like, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a 1-to-1 remake. If they do a 1-to-1 remake, people are gonna go, that's not what I want. I wanted a reimagining of a game I've already played that I can still go back and play. So I think with timeless gameplay, it's still kind of open to interpretation as to what that means or how far they'll go with it. I do think, look, Ocarina of Time, that snapshot in time back in the late 90s was super impressive. It was like, this is absolutely mind-blowing stuff that's happening here. And there are parts of that game, and it sounds silly to say, oh, I'm not gonna spoil it, but like there are moments, kid Link to adult Link, like where your mind was literally blown. You're like, oh, I thought the game was almost over. Back then, N64 games and stuff, they weren't like super long games necessarily, right? Like there was still arcade experiences, a few hours, you're like, oh, that's good. No, when you like turned into adult Link, it was like, what? This is still, there's so much more of this game. So it was really impressive then. I do still think though, timeless gameplay, they'll have to make some alterations coming off of like even the more rudimentary Z targeting, but there's just a lot more they can do now versus then. And so timeless gameplay, I think more so, hey, the gameplay core is timeless, but there's a lot of stuff we're going to be changing up and moving around and taking some liberties with. So I think this is a very, very compelling reveal for this game when they actually do it. And the question, of course, now is when will that be? Honestly, I think it's in the next month. I think there's gonna be a Zelda-specific direct. They will have like the full blowout for this this Legend of, apparently now remake, Ocarina of Time remake, and they'll probably show the Zelda movie trailer, I'm sure, in there. There'll be some collaborations, I'm sure, with Legos, or maybe there'll be something for NSO, or obviously merchandise, and they'll package it all together in this big 40th anniversary direct, and then they'll be off and running to the release for Ocarina of Time remake. So we'll keep an eye out for that one. But you know, this is fun because they did leave a lot up to people to kind of discover, and you better believe people are going to be looking into everything they can, even to the point where Nintendo has to alter metadata on their website to try to hide it. Next up, let's talk about Xbox and Satya Nadella, the CEO at Microsoft, talking about the future, what exactly is happening there, because it seems like, at least last week, every single day, some new piece of information was coming out. Sometimes it was great, Sometimes it was bad. Sometimes it sounded like Xbox just on fire, okay? Well, here we do at least hear a little bit more from Satya Nadella's perspective here as to what's going on with the hardware, how exactly they're positioning the platform to, I guess, be able to monetize better. But like we can see, this is in an interview, and this is with Hard Fork, and I went through and transcribed the parts here specifically about Xbox. I mean, the interview goes on for about 30 minutes or so, but like a portion of that was just asking about, hey, look at all the stuff that just happened, this last week. So he says, the challenge we have is we have not been monetizing that entertainment, that being about Xbox and their ecosystem. In fact, if anything, we've been subsidizing that entertainment. There's more monetization of Xbox games happening on YouTube than at Microsoft. I guess technically just playing through the game and doing like Let's Plays or discussing Xbox and YouTube monetize. Yeah. I mean, I see his point there. That doesn't mean we go do things that are unnatural. We want us to do what is really our job, which is to build great games, build great hardware, but we've got to do it in an economically sustainable way. I think we have to find ways to deliver the games in which it is economically relevant for the customer and for us. So today, there's an issue, in fact, unfortunately, because of what's happening with the cloud and AI, the prices have gone up. It's happening with PCs, it's happening with phones, Xbox is impacted as well. So the scarcity of the semiconductor supply and memory in particular having a massive impact on consumer electronics. That's a temporal thing that I think we'll get through. It is not going to be a permanent, but there is a permanent thing, which is what's the Xbox model going forward. And that's where, if you think about it, like PCs and consoles both have their places. Obviously, mobile has people playing elsewhere. And so we have to now bring it all together while staying true to what we've always done. So he spent a lot of time kind of talking in circles, not really giving a straightforward answer. And the interviewer, it seemed, was like, all right, I guess we're moving on from this. But I do think that now, especially when he goes, yeah, Xbox is more monetized, like they can monetize it more on YouTube than we can. And then you hear about Asher Sharma and the 3% accountability margin, or really just, hey, we have 3% margins right now. It's not great. So the way to improve that immediately in the short term, studio closures and layoffs. So we'll be, again, expect that. That'll be in the news, I'm sure, here in the coming weeks, as they're going to attempt a 100-day reset. That is, like, they're speed running that. And I think a lot of that also has to do with them doing this before next generation, as Satya Nadella is sitting here talking about semiconductor scarcity and issues around RAM, and how are they going to build the next Xbox, this Project Helix thing, if they're having a hard time building the current Xbox, that he says this situation is not permanent. But it's also not coming at a great time to where they can hang out this generation that clearly they have struggled their way through at this point. I kind of feel like they want to get the Project Helix, because Helix is not necessarily just the hardware. It's the idea of like merging the console and Windows and probably mobile as well into like under one big umbrella. And that way they can, if there is issue with hardware when it comes to scarcity, still be able to reach people through software and their operating system, which is, that's what Microsoft has always been built on. So I'm just very curious to see what actually happens here with this 100-day reset as they head into not only the holiday season, but next year, when they should start talking about what next generation is going to look like. As I would say, probably first quarter of next year, GDC, you'll have Sony out there with the PS6 and Microsoft with Project Helix. Next up, let's talk about the Steam Machine, and it looks like Valve is getting ready to make the grand reveal that will probably shock the world, who's already bracing for impact at this point when it comes to pricing. But like we can see, now this is over on social media from Steam Hardware Updates, with the announcement for hardware reservations and prices expected between June 22nd and June 30th. So next week, we're probably going to hear about this, and the reason for that is because reviewers are actively receiving Steam Machine and Steam Frame units. Okay, so they have images of this that are being shared out there, and they're kind of zoomed in of the box. There's actually a mention of how the Steam Machine comes with a Steam controller, 2 mounting brackets, and there's a Steam Machine in a box. It's interesting, the Steam controller being paired with the Steam Machine, I've just been wondering if Valve was going to try to have an option. We still don't know if it's bundled in with it outright. I was kind of thinking Valve might try to have an option where the Steam Machine is just by itself, just to do whatever they can to cut down on costs at this point. But they all say there are separate boxes or faceplates. I mean, I assume there's going to be all kinds of faceplates that you can buy, and they're releasing the I guess the 3D print or the dimensions, the CAD files, whatever it is, so that people can make their own or third parties can make them. That'll be really, really fun, you know, to customize them. But the embargo is lifting for hardware reviews June 23rd. Based on what happened with the Steam Machine controller, a Steam controller, I would expect that to be the time where Valve makes the full announcement for it. Steam Frame and Steam Machine, still uncertainty around if they're both launching together. I figure they are. And I mean, I guess the idea being you can also use them together in some way, but that's also two kind of separate niches in the sense that one is like that in the living room, TV, PC box. The other one's just kind of that VR sort of experience, the all-in-one experience there. So I think they can just ship them both at the same time without being too much overlap or really just getting in the way of one another. But here we are, the pricing on this thing. It's tough because now I think a lot of people are expecting $1,000 or more for the Steam Machine, which is very, very unfortunate because when this was first happening, there were like aspirations of this thing might be $400 or $500. That'd be incredible. And then it slowly ticked up over time. And I will admit, just based on what we're seeing, and especially that Steam Deck pricing adjustment, I mean, that set everything in motion for expectations. And I think this thing's going to be, I do think it's going to be like $800 or $900, and $1,000 isn't out of the question. But I still think they're going to try to keep it under that $1,000 mark. And it legitimately might just be, it's $999, comes with a controller, comes with Half-Life 3. That's a whole thing too, by the way. Are they going to make a software announcement with a new Half-Life game next week? And, I mean, that would at least be an exciting thing because you don't need the Steam Machine to play it. If you have a PC, there you go. You can play through the game. But Valve, they got some work to do when it comes to the PR side of things because it's going to be a tough sell if it is indeed $1,000 or more, but we'll find out here in the coming days. And in our last bit of news, let's talk Spyro the Dragon. That's right, I didn't forget about the Spyro fans out there, and there was an interesting interview that popped up, and I thought we'd go over it here because it does explain why Toys for Bob went in the direction of, let's pitch a new Spyro game, and honestly, why Microsoft went ahead and just, I assume, greenlit it right away. We can see this. Now, this is over on Games Radar as they were speaking with Associate Creative Director on Spyro A Realm Beyond and the studio head at Toys for Bob. Now, they were asked about why they chose Spyro here, saying, honestly, Spyro has kind of a deep place in our studio's heart. We've always admired that kind of small but mighty underdog story of the character that's taking on these overwhelming odds. You know, we see ourselves in that a little bit, and honestly, it just was a no-brainer. Since we made Reignited, we have had the hope to take him further. We always wanted to return to the world of Spyro to bring the character forward, and so time was right, and we left it to chance. Going independent was taking on massive, massive risk, right? It's taking a bet on ourselves. We knew coming out of Reignited, that title sold over 11 million copies. So there's an audience that woke up to show up for that series. Wow. You know, that number got shared. Now, really? The Reignited trilogy sold 11 million copies. I will admit, it's because it's you know, essentially a collection. It is a little bit of an easier sell, and it's also been on sale many, many times. But the big thing that shows when you are trying to greenlight something is, hey, there's interest here. Now, that's an updated figure, but even back then, several million copies is enough to make that pitch to Microsoft on the way out, because remember, they went independent from Activision Blizzard at the time, because they were just working on Call of Duty. It's like, hey, you guys could probably make an awesome Spyro game, but those multiplayer levels in Call of Duty, they're not going to QA and then fix themselves, are they? So let's get to it. I do like that Toys for Bob did take a chance on themselves, spun out to independence, and was able to get a contract with Microsoft to make a new Spyro game all at once. And based on what happened with Reignited Trilogy, based on what I've seen with the reaction online, I do think people are going to show up for this new Spyro game next year. It's coming out on a range of platforms. So yeah, I feel like this game is going to sell pretty well. Now, we still need to see what the game exactly is. They've shown very quick gameplay snippet, but it seems like it's going to be a pretty big Spyro game. The world looks massive. Spyro's flying around, so Spyro fans, very excited, and I think Toys for Bob is going to have a pretty good release with this one heading into 2027. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, Which game showcase was your favorite from the last couple weeks? Okay, the Nintendo Direct was leading 41%, then Summer Game Fest 25%, Xbox Showcase 24%, and then Sony State of Play was 9%. Wow, no love for the Sony State of Play. The Nintendo Direct, interestingly enough, leading the way here. People were a little surprised on that one, but you know, it's funny, I look in the comments, they went, well, Kingdom Hearts 4, obviously, Ocarina of Time, the remake, Duskbloods. And I was thinking about it. I said that was based on, so the Xbox Showcase closed out with Call of Duty, which is questionable. Summer Game Fest did close out with Final Fantasy VII Revelation that looked awesome all the way around. It's hard to argue with the Ocarina of Time remake. Even the small like snippet of it, the fact that it has drawn so much interest online, yeah, it's going to hit that nostalgia bone, but also that curiosity of, wow, they are, like, this looks like not a small budget either behind this thing. This seems like a serious deal for Nintendo with this release. So there's just a lot of excitement all the way around that. And then if you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, you're probably voting for the Direct because Kingdom Hearts 4 was there. You have no choice. But either way, there you go. I guess the Direct leading the way here. For me, I still think, in my mind, Summer Game Fest was probably the best show based on everything that they had there, which did include a pretty lengthy look at the closeout with finally the end of this Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from NCK, who says, a grandma who is aware that their grandchild wants a Steam gift card for their birthday is top tier. To be honest, that's probably the default or like the suggestion. So if they're like, hey, it's his birthday, get him a Steam card. And then, you know, the grandmother goes into the store and is like, what's a Steam card? And then hopefully the associate can navigate her there. But way back in the day, there were these like really, really generic or kind of junk, like 101 and 1 handhelds. And they were like Tiger handhelds. I don't know if anyone else remembers this. And that always seemed to be the thing that the grandparent would buy. It wasn't the new Genesis game or Super Nintendo game or even N64 title. That's the thing that, and I feel like it was always like the infomercials that would come up on TV and they would try to sell them that. Or I guess if they went to Kmart or I don't know, where's some other old Circuit City or Caldor or something, they'd walk in and go, oh, I guess that's the thing that the kids want. So, hey, Steam, I'm sure the Steam gift cards bailed out a lot of holidays or Christmases or birthdays. So it is kind of a shame that they're going away just for that fact. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you did want to take a look at the holiday release lineup that's hitting and it's just one game after another. I did a whole video on that and I'll leave it right below. Thanks guys for watching and I'll see you next time.